Hello. In my previous video, I talked about China and the Trump administration's policy towards China. What I'd like to talk about right now is basically how the United States is different than China. China is powerful for many, many different reasons, and their growth is outrageous compared to the United States' economic growth, and they're going to definitely become the number one country in the planet. And we can just admit that that's going to happen because no one's standing up to them, and the Trump administration definitely doesn't want to. But that's been going on for decades, decades and decades and decades. America is becoming weaker and weaker and weaker. And the Congress, the politicians, including the White House, of course, just focus on the next election. China doesn't do that. They don't have elections the way that we do. Quote unquote, they're still a communist country. You can take a different opinion on that if you want to, economically, of course. But in the democracy the United States has, they don't focus on anything more than the next election cycle. But what they do to think long term, not the way the Chinese do, but they defund stuff. They defund things. They make sure they fail, and then because they failed, they can say, "Oh, look, it's terrible. We have to deregulate." And once you deregulate it, then you can have it taken over by private industry, and you can have investors from foreign countries, and then coincidentally enough, China does have an ability to make money off of that, off of us. Whereas social services are really there for our people. You break it up, then it's there, belongs to everybody, internationally speaking. So education, they keep slashing, slashing, slashing. We get a dumbed down populace, and we can see the way elections go the way they do. People believe outrageous lies because they're not willing to, or not able to, haven't been taught how to think for themselves, how to think critically. Critical thinking skills are not valued in this country. You had candidates like Santorum that berate the educated, berate people that have college degrees. Trump says he loves the undereducated, the uneducated. He goes at his rallies and people cheer, cheer, cheer. But what happened to America where we had Eisenhower and administrations that focused on STEM, focused on mathematics and science, and people said that's what we have to do. You know, we've got the Soviet threat, and we're going to educate ourselves, and we're going to be stronger and more powerful than them. We still have threats. China is a huge threat. Economically, India and China turn out way more engineers, way more scientists. So we're dumbing down our education system. We'll never be able to compete with them. Never. Unless we fix this issue. So one thing that really impressed me about Bernie Sanders is that he was the only person in the 2006 campaign that talked about the defunding of the postal system being a threat to our democracy and that he would tackle that. When I heard that, I was like, wow, I couldn't believe someone is finally calling this issue up, so we can talk about it. The GOP goes after education, they go after social programs, they go after the postal service, they go after everything they possibly can to later say it's broken. Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, a lot of people have very divisive opinions about this. It's a mixed bag, but realize that in our two-party system, to have anything really work, there needs to be bipartisanship. I'm sure we can agree. Bipartisanship, both parties working together, at least in a limited fashion, is better than not at all. The tax scam that was recently passed was not bipartisan whatsoever. The resistance to it was bipartisan. And when the Democrats had to pass the Affordable Care Act all by themselves, the Republicans said, oh, look, they didn't involve us, blah, 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 blah. But they didn't want to be involved. They were proposing amendments to the Democrats. The Democrats said, okay, if we put this change in, will you support it? If you put this change in, will you support it? If you put this change in, will you support it? There were dozens and dozens of changes made to the Affordable Care Act to appease Republicans. And Republicans still didn't vote for it. So there were amendments made by Democrats that maybe they would have been able to get some Democratic votes if they would have actually gone for it. But you know what? They didn't want to be bipartisan. You have one party, and again, Democrats are not our saviors. They're not miracle workers, and they definitely have their flaws. But you have a consistent tactic from the Republicans to underfund things, say that, oh, look, now they're broken, deregulate them, sell the parts off to private industry so that they can appease shareholders, their donors, and this goes on and on and on and on and on. Charter schools, great example of a system that, oh yeah, we were told that all that money for public schools, if we just put in charter schools, everything will be great. Our education system is only getting worse and worse and worse, and there's no concurrent proof that charter schools have improved anything. And I challenge you to look for this. And everything that I say in these videos, don't take my word for it. Look for it yourself. Don't listen to trolls. Don't go on Twitter and stuff like that, okay? But just think about, is there a consistent tactic? Follow the money and see where that leads you. Always follow the money.